I'm Kristen Chantrell. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. I now call the East Lyme Inland Wetland Agency meeting of September 13th to order at 7 o'clock. This meeting is being, no, that's not true. All right, so today I have Phyllis Berger, Jason Diebel, Doreen Ryan, and Don Phimister today. Gary Gashel is our agent. And yep, that's it. So let's see. So we'll start with the pledge. The pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we do have one addition to the agenda. Do you want to make a motion to do that?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda a presentation discussion from Art Carlson. Anybody second?
I second that.
Put that under new business.
I will add it to new business.
I have something to add to the agenda. Last month we talked about having a policy as far as items that you approve, a guideline, and I don't know if it's been added. I didn't see it.
I haven't gotten that far, but I can report on that
Next month?
but working on it.
Okay, all right, fine.
And so we have a motion to add.
So just the one, the Art Carlson, yes.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Okay.
Second that?
That was me.
Doreen.
Are you taking notes today too? Gary's double.
I just, yeah, if Jen will get them tomorrow.
Do you want us to, like, before we talk, say our names so that way she can, it'll be easier to take notes?
You have masks, yes.
Yeah, and you can't see who's talking.
Yeah. Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, so next on our agenda is public delegation. It's the time when members of the public are invited to speak to the commission about certain matters, issues, or concerns related to approved wetland permits and in-house proposals, or general topics of discussion are open to comment. Agenda items, referrals, applications subject to a decision by the commission, public hearing, or in litigation may not be discussed. Either or, yeah.
Yeah, I got one.
Okay.
Evan Cooper.
The podium. We got old school handouts, or we can put the
This
pictures
is
up.
old school, but here's some
Oh, I
pictures.
do. Oh, hey.
What are you after? Like that little device in your
Oh, I see.
Oh, boy.
Okay, hold on.
Screen? Does it stick to your right?
Okay, it says the projector's on.
Wow, that's a heavy
Is that-
stick. Am I on? Good catch. We can just do pictures. Just do the pictures? Yeah, you got the pictures. We got it. There you go.
Yelling at them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you can pass them around. So yeah, my name's Evan Cooper. I live at 2 Gurley Road in East Lyme, Connecticut. Family, we moved to town in 2008. I got, I guess, 3 houses now in town, pay all our taxes. But in the storm, we suffered quite a bit of damage from a stream that runs in between our house. We're on the town line, right between Waterford and East Lyme. And looking for your guys' concurrence in my interpretation of the code, or if I'm interpreting it wrong, then we'll go that way. But you know, from what you can see, the house we had water over the road, and it took what was usually a little pond in front of the house, and it basically blew the back end of it out and eroded and formed 2 new pretty significant, like 2-3 foot deep holes exposed some pipes and is now eroding towards the house. So I put a Band-Aid together now just to try to keep some of the water so that it's going where it originally was going. But when I read the rules and the regs, my interpretation was if it's maintenance and you're just putting it back the way that it was, but maybe adding some additional stronger stones, that I could do that. And that's really what I'm here for. So I read the code. It says maintenance. It says preventing erosion, preventing damage. I'm worried about the water eroding. The way it's coming out, it's eroding in a counterclockwise motion towards my foundation of my house. So I'm just looking to put it back the way it was. But I realize it's within X number of feet of wetlands, so that's why I'm here. I just want to do it right.
So, I went out to the site, I did observe it, there's two large, holes that were scoured out. Based on the flow, we do that, there's some basically sort of a back eddy, the current circulating counterclockwise that's continuing to erode the bank. For those of you who weren't on the commission a number of years ago, I think Phyllis may have been the only one, a previous homeowner applied for a permit to reinforce a portion of the bank. I have to report that that reinforcement helped. It's just the area south of that, further downstream, that unfortunately eroded out.
Yeah.
So the question here is, in terms of permitting, does the commission feel that the homeowner needs to apply for a permit over this fall under Section 4 D of our regulations of the exempt activity as property maintenance? Some of the concerns that I had was, period of time when we were doing the work. The previous permit required the applicant to do the work during a period of low flow, which typically is June, July, August. As we're at the tail end of that and into September, looking forward, for the homeowner, basically to go through the permit process could take several months, and then you're into January, probably not a great time to be doing work out there. And most likely it would be left to the spring. I don't know that the homeowners is wanting to wait that long to do such work. So as far as guidance, try to expedite any application that comes forward, if that's the commission so desires. Otherwise, I would direct him to start risk erosion work. Maybe discussions with the homeowner was to basically put larger boulders in, similar to the previous application, just continue what was going on there. It would also entail placing boulders in the stream bed so that we don't channelize the flow as much. That's going to be the challenge. Because obviously if we channelize anything, as it reaches the mouth of this stream, you'll get water erosion there. So, there's a fair amount of material which just washed downstream, which is still on the homeowner's property.
I just want to move that upstream.
And that material is, still usable, and if they can, they'd like to use it, obviously, to fill this area. I would note that there are some exposed pipes. There's two that seem pretty old. I'm not sure what they're to. There's a PVC pipe that is exposed under the water. I would think that infrastructure probably should be secured and buried as appropriately, but again, it's underwater currently.
So this is part of the public delegation.
Yeah.
I feel like we're being asked to render a judgment.
You're being asked to make a determination whether or not you feel that the applicant would need to apply for a permit or not. You can do so. You can have a preliminary review under the Connecticut state statutes, and neither the commission nor the applicant or the homeowner will be held to what is discussed, but it at least gives the potential prospective applicant some guidance as to how they should proceed forward.
Sure.
Yeah, I just don't want neighbors to call up and be like, "You've got an excavator by the water. Did you go to the town?" Well, yeah, I went to the town, and I'm doing this the right way. I'm not, trying to cut any corners, but
I also want to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
As
That's
far
why
as
I'm here.
concerned, as I know, we typically don't respond to applicants or members of the public during public delegation.
Typically, no. I didn't have an opportunity to add, and we could add it to the agenda if you want to add it. Again,
Got
if
it.
there's motion.
No, this
add it.
is opportunity. He can just walk up anytime. Anybody can walk up and say, "I got this problem."
Right, but you don't have to respond.
Oh yeah, right. We don't have
You're
to.
not required.
Right, but I mean, I'd rather give the guy a break. And,
Yeah, I think procedurally, we just want to make sure that we're Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because we appreciate you coming to us, because obviously, I mean, you were hit hard by this storm, and
Yeah.
that's very unfortunate, and we need to solve that problem. So,
Yep.
I'd just like to be able to direct him whether he should apply for a permit.
yeah.
And I'll guide him through that process, or if he can do the work, begin the work as an exempt.
I mean, he's
activity.
restoring what was there, so that would fall under the,
So,
He's not violating the law.
Right.
the following uses, operations and uses shall be permitted in inland wetlands and watercourses as of right. And section 4B says uses incidental to the enjoyment and maintenance of residential property. Said property defined as equal to or smaller than the largest minimum residential lot site permitted anywhere in the municipality, provided that in any town where there are no zoning regulations establishing minimum residential lot sites, the largest minimum lot site shall be 2 acres. Such incidental uses shall include maintenance of existing structures and landscaping, and shall not include removal or deposition of significant amounts of material from or onto a wetland or watercourse, or diversion or alteration of a watercourse. And there's the rub.
Yeah.
So the question here is, what is constitutes
Significant.
significant
Yeah.
material?
Well,
well, it's ironic because the storm washed away the
he's got
significant
significant
material.
damage, so he's got
Right, he's
significant damage.
replacing it, yeah.
He's trying to fix it, so I'm down with you.
I mean, without further calculations, I don't know how much material will be required to repair that.
Right.
Certainly, you can take a look at a plan preliminarily, and I think if it's, the thresholds I typically use are 100 cubic yards. Removing more than that application probably should come before the commission. And so, using that criteria, if the amount of material needed is less than 100 cubic yards, so it probably
Not
less
bad.
than significant.
Sure, sure. Okay.
So without that information, but otherwise, I don't know if that helps you guys.
And we feel that there is a ticking clock, there is,
Yeah, sure.
In terms of getting the work done, yeah, I guess to restore the site and stabilize it.
It should be stabilized as a priority, yeah, we don't want the
Priority.
foundation to be.
Those pipes within
That's
those
my
pipes,
concern.
within
It
those
goes
pipes.
back to
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
foundation,
Those
there's
pipes.
pipes,
Right,
and
right.
and then if you get into winter and you got frost and all
All of
that, it
it.
just becomes
All of it.
a bigger nightmare,
Right.
so.
So I wanted to direct him to start repairing it, but obviously not without guidance from the commission.
So would you be doing the work, Mr. Cooper?
No, hire
Maybe
an
hire
outside,
somebody.
yeah.
So Gary, is there a minimum amount of work that he could start and then get a permit? Or an application?
I mean, he could at least give us, his proposed proposal, so we can look at what the plan is, what's it actually all entail in terms of quantity.
The estimates is like about a week of work with
Wow.
with an excavator in terms of, getting the stone in and getting it set. So I don't, if that gives you direction in terms
Yeah.
of like if I start, how much do I start and then stop? Like
Well, I mean.
it starts to
it's gonna-
become inefficient if you're bringing a machine in and then
Yeah.
pulling it out and then bringing
yeah,
it back
It's going
in.
to take you a while to get a contractor anyway.
In this environment, probably.
Yeah.
but
So, I mean, we
Let's
could
see.
be looking at a month.
I mean, he could
Hopefully not.
make
I
an
have a-
application and start work.
No, he needs-
Then he runs the risk of being in violation, theoretically, right? Doing work without a permit, if that's what the commission wanted. The other option is if he started work and I enforced, I could just finish it through the enforcement action.
There we go. Right there.
One way to do it.
it feels very out of sync, and bringing it to us like this, I feel like will potentially put us in an awkward position later as an agency. I'm not entirely sure how, but I just foresee us running into trouble.
Well, you're
While I
right.
completely sympathize with what's going on here and do want to have speedy redress, I don't know how to proceed. I don't know if we...
And the storm just happened. That's why I'm here. I'm like, all right, this is bigger than we thought it was. Let's get there as quick as we can so we can get
I
on it
understand.
and get it
I
fixed.
definitely understand, but
Yeah.
I feel,
So-
I don't know, what do we do here? How do we proceed? Anybody have an idea or make a motion?
He gave us like 2 or 3 options right
Two or
there.
three options.
Yeah.
I have some ideas I can
Let's-
discuss with the homeowner and see which way he wants
Okay.
to proceed. One, determining how much material is going to be needed.
Right.
Is it going to exceed a threshold, just basic thresholds that I use, which aren't written in stone anymore, unintended.
Right.
But, yeah, we can take a look at that. And if it's over that 100 cubic yards, we can say, hey, we did an application.
Okay.
Again, if they start work, we can go through and begin an enforcement action, which takes time and effort.
Yeah.
But again, it can be handled with this commission under that order. Well, it's not his fault per se.
No, right.
So I don't
Right, right.
necessarily agree with issuing an order, but I can work with it.
sure.
the options, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's the do nothing option, which I think we just,
Well, then he's got, or the permit option, he's got to go through the whole process, like go through, get the agenda, get the permit, da-da-da, right?
correct. And wait.
So that's like option 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we have touch in all of this, right? We can do all of this stuff. We can say, number 1, let that happen.
My recommendation would be probably to start making the application, start making provisions to do the work, and get that scheduled.
Yeah, I
Sounds
agree.
good to me.
Okay,
Yeah,
I like
I'd
that
like to
option.
see, I mean,
Two simultaneous.
There you go.
understanding that it's a lot of erosion
Emergency.
and the situation is completely out of your control, but I think to make sure that it's put back and done, we should see the plan for that.
Yeah, I want the town engineer to review the plans.
Yeah,
Totally.
because this could very
Okay.
well happen again, and we don't want to flood downstream neighbors, or you have the
Ugh.
issue again, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the downstairs, there's only one downstream neighbor.
Carmen, yeah,
And they're-
he's out of the
they're out
floodplain
of the
too.
floodplain.
Oh, okay.
His property didn't suffer nearly as much damage. He had debris strewn about his property, but his bank, which was lined with stone,
Big one.
held. They were just bigger stones.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Very
sorry
sorry
for
for
that,
that.
No?
Be in touch.
Thank you.
You too.
Oh,
thanks.
here's your pictures. So,
You wanna? Do you?
no, you give me to Gary, I guess.
You put me in for his
Yeah,
insurance
for good
company.
reference. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Lindsay Rush. I live at 15 Grassy Hill Road. And I came to the meeting tonight because I've been concerned about some backhoe activity that began in late July near a year-round stream on the property that abuts mine. That property is parcel number 52.03 on the town maps. My understanding is that the Inland Wetland Review covers 300 feet from inland waterways, including streams. And this backhoe activity was much less in the 150 foot or less range, judging by the scale on the town GIS maps. My understanding that the backhoe work was grubbing because they cleared all of the plant material in a road that you could drive on back into the property. And while I think that the purpose of the grubbing was for a percolation test prior to selling the property, I didn't see anything when I tried to read the statutes that percolation grubbing would be exempt from the inland review in that 300 feet. And so I live near the stream, and so I benefit from a lot of the wildlife that occurs around it, and so that's why I'm here today in interest of the stream. So when I first inquired, I was told that the 300-foot rule was being contested and was giving the impression that maybe the 300-foot review wasn't actually valid. So I'm a little confused whether that actually is the rule or not. And if it is, has that grubbing work at that property undergone review? I haven't been able to find mention of it in any of the meeting minutes that I've looked at. And so thank you for any information you can help provide to protect the inland streams that we're so lucky to have in East Lyme.
Yeah, thank you for telling us about that. I can answer one of your questions. The 300-foot are regulated. It doesn't matter that it's being contested. That's what we're abiding to right now. So if it's within 300 feet, we want to know about it.
Okay. And
As far as percolation testing and grubbing,
I can answer the second part of your question. You and I have some email correspondence. The landowner did apply for, and I have here their application to do that work.
Okay. So the work occurred July 23rd was when the backhoe was on the property, and the percolation tests have been subsequent to that.
Correct. So this is a subsequent application to the activity.
Okay.
The applicant is well aware of that.
Okay.
That's all I'll say right now. In regards to that, so the application is pending. I do have to issue that permit.
So
Don't necessarily see any concerns with it. Exploratory test pits is typically something that's done frequently on properties. It is up to the landowner to obtain permits for that activity when it's within a regulated.
So I'm a biologist by training, so I'm curious at what sort of, what activities would determine whether or not a permit would be approved for grubbing work that close to a waterway. And I should say waterway that did pop its banks with this latest storm that has affected a lot of people. It's an active year-round stream that moves water.
I would particularly look at erosion and sedimentation controls, and that the area gets restabilized after their work is done. Basically, any material that they excavate out of a test pit is either put back, smoothed out, and covered over and seeded. If there's enough leaf litter, you use the leaf litter back over the hole.
Okay.
Does it look like they did the grubbing just to get access to where they're going to dig the, was there a road there already?
No, there was not.
Oh,
It
there
was,
not. They
it was,
created a road.
they created a road with a backhoe, yeah.
Oh, I see.
And that's an application, Gary, that will probably be coming to us at some point.
It's an administrative permit application currently. I don't know that I would bring test pits to the agency. It's such a small, typically minor activity, but again.
Yeah.
um,
And
I
it,
guess-
if it would help, I have pictures of the GIS map and where the digging would occur, showing, or where the digging did occur, showing that it's well within that 300-foot.
what I can do, because I have extra copies here. Done.
Yeah.
Copy of that.
Oh, cool. See that?
So they applied to do this work?
Yes,
But it was after the fact?
yes.
Oh.
8/12/2021 was the application date.
And I believe I started trying to contact the Inland Wetland Agency in July about it.
So that's where we're at. I can
Okay.
speak to you offline further.
Yeah, I would just be interested, to know what the process is and when, there are opportunities for the public to weigh in on, the property and the surrounding topography, because I'm lucky enough to be able to observe what the area is like in all the different seasons, not just in the summer when the water course is low, but other times of the year when the water's a little bit higher.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so
yeah,
how-
Gary, would you be able to be in touch with her if there's an
Yeah, I mean,
application?
Obviously,
Yeah.
if an application comes forward with anything, depending on what that application is, if it requires a public hearing, you might see a sign go up.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it would just be listed on an agenda, so you'd have to kind of track the agendas of the planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind
Well,
of
so-
challenging to.
Sure. Well, that's what I've been doing to date, and I didn't see it at all, which is why I finally came here tonight, because I wasn't sure that it was going through any of the channels. So I should just keep checking in to see what the process is.
Yeah,
And
we
then-
haven't heard anything about it either yet.
Yeah.
So
And then I'm just curious, what's the distinction between something going through the administrative sort of review and a more thorough review? How is that typically done? As someone who's not involved with the
yeah, no, that's
process.
a great question because we've actually been kind of debating that ourselves, actually.
I'll,
Get this regulation.
Yeah, there's regulation that's that our wetlands
So,
official determines based on their spill being brought
It's all
in.
on the internet too.
so section 12 of our regulations,
Mhm.
and the agency may delegate to its duly authorized agent the authority to approve or extend a license for an activity that is not located in the watercourse. Such agent finds that the conduct of such activity will result in no greater than a minimal impact on any wetlands or watercourses, provided such agent is included in comprehensive training program involving commercial environmental protection pursuant to section 22A-39 of the general statutes. Request for approval shall be made on the form provided by the agency. This goes on about application procedure.
Okay.
So that's essentially what the applicant did here. They made an application to the agent, meaning me, which I need to review
Yeah.
and either approve or deny the
Yeah.
application.
And I'm just hearing this, so I read that previously, and so maybe this is a naive question, but I thought when that was just read out loud that it was something that it could be administratively approved if it was outside of the 300-foot review zone, but would potentially impact the 300-foot zone. Was that a correct interpretation of what was just read?
No, if it was outside the area of the wetlands and watercourses. So wetlands are delineated by soil
Yeah.
types. They're poorly drained, very poorly drained, alluvial and floodplain soils.
Yeah.
So any work taking place in there, the agency has to issue that permit. The work is not prohibited, it's regulated.
Absolutely.
So work occurring in the wetland or watercourse, I can issue that permit, but in the area outside of wetlands and watercourse, I can issue it.
Yeah. My understanding is that if this is within the 300 feet, that does mean it's within the watercourse designation?
It's within the upland review area.
It's within the upland review. Okay.
Yeah.
Different things.
So from the.
So what's the definition of a water, like how close would it have to be the water course then?
um,
Within the wetland delineation boundaries.
And so, and what is, and that's by soil type, that's not by proximity?
It's by soil.
Okay.
So we have definitions of
Yeah.
regulated activities, watercourses, as well as wetlands. So wetlands means any land including submerged land is defined in this section not regulated pursuant to section 22A through 28 through 22A 35, inclusive of the Connecticut General Statutes, which consists of any soil type designated as poorly drained, very poorly drained, or alluvial and floodplain by the National Cooperative Soil Survey, as it may be amended from time to time. Watercourses means rivers, streams, brooks, waterways, lakes, ponds, marshes, swamps, bogs, and all other bodies of water, natural or artificial, vernal or intermittent, public or private, which are contained within, flow through, or border upon the town or any portion thereof not regulated pursuant to section 22A-28 through 22A-35 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Intermittent watercourses shall be delineated by a defined permanent channel and bank and the occurrence of two or more of the following characteristics. A, evidence of scour or deposits of recent alluvium or detritus. B, the presence of standing or flowing water for a duration longer than a particular storm incident. And C, the presence of hydrophytic vegetation.
Okay. I don't know if it's relevant. There is definitely detritus from the last rain event that we just had a week or two ago, and I do have photos of that. That would be near where this grubbing work was doing. I don't know if that's relevant. I'll let you guys interpret, but there was definitely overflow from the stream in that area. So, the detritus was pushed up along the banks of the road and in that area. So, great. Well, thank you so much for explaining some of this to me. As someone who is new to the Inland Wetlands Agency, it's a complex process, but I appreciate you helping explain some of the things. And I will. It sounds like the best thing for me to do is just keep an eye on the meeting minutes. Is there? And anything else I should be doing in the meantime?
I would invite you to periodically contact my office, just check in, myself, Dan, and Karen.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it to our
Thank you.
attention.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else for public delegation? No? All right, we'll move on to the public hearing, the application of Howard Hale, the applicant, Habitat for Humanity, the owner, to conduct regulated activities.
I think it was a public hearing.
We had that public hearing?
Looking at the.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Sorry
public
about
hearing.
that was last month. All right, public hearing. The application of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency to amend the East Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourse regulations to add section 9.3 requiring the posting of a sign for applications requiring a public hearing. So do we have anybody to discuss that? Do we need to brief rundown? We're just looking for signage for any applications to be placed on the property and add that to our regulations.
Yeah, just for those of the audience, the proposed regulation requires public notice in addition to the notice of the hearing by publication. Public notice of a public hearing shall be made as follows. Posting of a sign at least 15 days prior to any public hearing. The applicant shall post a sign on the premises indicating that such action is proposed. The sign shall be of durable material, 4 by 4 in size, and shall be firmly set at least 3 feet above the ground surface and located so as to be clearly visible and legible to the most heavily used adjacent town road or 2-lane state highway. The sign shall contain the following in black block lettering, not less than 3 inches in height, a road sign 2 inches in height, or a window sign with white background. The sign shall be removed within 10 days of completion of the public hearing. Should a public hearing be continued, the applicant shall modify or replace the sign and add language announcing the continuance, which shall include the time, date, and location of said hearing. Said sign shall be posted not less than 7 days prior to the continued hearing. That's it.
This mirrors what's done in planning, and we want to do it for wetlands as well.
Yeah, so this, essentially, the zoning commission just adopted this, I believe, last month. Planning requires the posting of a sign for a public hearing as a default anyway. So this would just make everything consistent across the board, as well as be more transparent, I guess, what's going on in town and around the neighborhood. So, any public wants to speak?
So we're good? All right. So what are we thinking? So can I make a motion to?
Probably have someone else make a motion.
Somebody-
I can chair, but good.
Any discussion regarding that? Everybody happy?
Good.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the change, to accept the amendment of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Watercourse regulation to add section 9.3 requiring the posting of a sign for applications requiring a public hearing.
Second.
All right, Doreen and Don. Everybody approve?
Yeah.
For all those in favor?
Sweet. Gary's got it.
Aye.
Everybody?
Aye.
All right,
Unanimous.
great.
With that, I'd ask that the commission also set an effective date. I'd make a motion as
Oh.
well.
Suggestions?
End of the month.
28th?
Gary. Pardon? That's the appeal period. 15 days. Oh, right. Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
Which is the 28th, right?
I think so, yeah.
Would you like to make a motion to?
Well, I'm waiting for Gary to
Okay.
play with his phone and then.
15
Yes,
days
fine.
to the 28th, so I would say 29th, 30th.
Okay. 29th.
By the time it's 15 days from the date of publication, so I would anticipate this notice getting published on Thursday the 16th.
Oh, okay.
So it would be 15 days from there. So October.
I make a motion to have this amendment go into effect on October 1st.
I second the motion.
All right,
Need to vote?
Doreen and Jason, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, all approved. All right, so moving on, the acceptance of minutes, the meeting minutes as of August 7th, 20, was that the right date? Was that, I don't know.
August 9th. I
August
think.
9th,
Oh,
2021?
Oh, no, sorry, it is the 7th. 7th was the site walk, yeah.
Okay, and the site walk, oh, I see, August 7th, 2021 site walk meeting. Oh, two separate, we have to do two separate approvals.
Yeah, for the minutes.
So for the minutes of the August 7th, 2021 site walk meeting, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Phyllis, and a second?
I second it.
Doreen, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, everybody. Moving on, do I have the meeting minutes of August 9th, 2021, the regular meeting? Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of August 9th.
All right, Jason,
I'll second.
Phyllis?
Phyllis.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Everybody? Okay, thank you. Ex officio reports, not tonight. Okay. All right, so moving on to new business. We have the application of Kristen Clark, PE, for Cold Spring Lot Management, LLC, John Drabick, owner, for Nottingham Hills Subdivision Phase 5, prepared for Kristen Clark, English Harbor Asset Management, for an 8-lot subdivision of property at 121 Upper Patagonia Road, East Lyme Assessors Map 35.0, Lot 44. We are going to be determining if there's going to be a public hearing or not.
Attorney Gary here representing the applicant. And
Attorney Murray, just got a promotion you probably didn't want. Is on behalf, yeah. So I'm going to hand out just a sort of an overview of what's taking place here, and then John, JP, will go through what's being proposed. This property is the Girl Scout camp up on 121 Patagonia Road. I represent English Harbor Asset Management Company, which is the contract purchaser. Some of the members were present for the site walk on Saturday. The original proposal, when Mr. Drabick, who is the owner of the property, was doing it, I think JP was 11 lots. We actually, in looking at the property, have reduced it to 8 lots, 9, I'm sorry, and changed the location of some of the, there was originally proposed and I don't think it made it to this commission or the planning commission, but when we went to contract with this, our engineer looked at this. They had proposed in the inland wetlands building a biofilter in the wetlands themselves. Our engineer suggested that we not do that since we were shrinking the size of the subdivision or the proposed subdivision, move the biofilter above the wetlands so that it cleanses all the water before it goes into the wetlands, and it's not affecting the wetlands at all. So there's no proposed activity in the wetlands themselves. There's 2 wetlands on the property, but there's activity proposed, obviously, in the review area within the 300 feet. The overall, and you'll see in the packet that I gave you, the outline that JP is going to go through in a moment, but I think from our perspective, we're actually improving the site because the water now drains, its sheet flows off, and there's the old road to the camp in there, and a good portion of the water travels down that, sheet flows right down into Patagoncet, upper Patagoncet there, and then flows into a culvert, and then flows into the lake. So what's there now is going to be trapped on site, mitigated, and before it goes into that, we're actually decreasing the net flow on the site by 25%. So it's an actual improvement. In the packet that you'll see riprap and a swale in there. That is on the front of the property. That's something that the town did fairly recently, unbeknownst to us and without Mr. Drabick's permission apparently, to address the water that is running off upper Patagoncet. So they're directing it into a culvert and it goes into the lake. That's not anything that, want the commission to be clear, it's not anything that we did either way. So in terms of the sort of the review standard, we're hoping to avoid a public hearing based on the fact that we're not actually undertaking any activity in the wetlands themselves. What activity we're undertaking here is an improvement to the site and is actually going to reduce the runoff not only into Patagoncet Lake, but it's also going to filter the runoff so that what runoff is coming off the site itself is cleaner than what's going in there presently. And I'll turn it over to JP at this point.
An overview of the development area we're talking about. Lake Patagoncet here, and the green is the area of the subdivision itself. This is the existing conditions plan. The blue are the wetlands areas. These wetlands are about 70 feet higher than anything going on down here. So
I'm sorry. Should he be speaking into a mic for?
Sorry about that.
On the table here. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Check, 1, 2. There we go. Does that work better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In any event, this is an existing conditions plan. The blue is where the existing wetlands are at this point, and as I was saying, these wetlands here are about 70 feet higher in elevation than any of the proposed activities down here. So if anything happens to those because of this, we've got a lot bigger problems on our hands. This is the wetlands that we're discussing here. The green area is the disturbed area of the camp itself, where there are roads, tent pads, a couple of buildings, and the yellow indicates where ledge is. This is the proposed lot layout with the orange showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 lots. We are looking at shared driveways in an effort to cut down any of the sightline issues or extra drainage situations. And these are the 4 curb cuts that are going to take place. The existing one is going to stay as it is. And basically, the area is broken down into two drainage areas. This drainage area B being the largest one. And this is where the engineer, Tim May, has decided that it would be a good place for the biofilter rather than infringing upon the existing wetlands at all. What it will do, the biofilter will detain and clean the runoff from here before it is let out toward the wetlands themselves, and basically cleaning up the water before it even gets into that wetlands and before it goes further on into the lake. So basically, this is a 50-foot around this wetlands, 100-foot around the wetlands, 300-foot around the wetlands. This is the area of the biofilter, which is, there's a maintenance shed out there, and it's just basically behind that. And these little other green dots are where the rain gardens would go for any roof runoff, taking care of the other half of that drainage area. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what we're up to.
And the other, as JP was pointing out, with the driveways, the purpose behind the shared driveways is so that we can reduce street runoff or the runoff into the streets, and then basically taking the rain gardens and directing the roof runoff into those rain gardens. And there's in your packet, there's a booklet on rain gardens. I think everybody knows how they function, so forth, but what we do is they're included in there. So I think from our perspective, and obviously it's the commission's decision at this point, but we would like to think that we don't necessarily need a public hearing. We obviously have to review it, and we would incorporate or take your comments accordingly on that. But really looking at this, there isn't any significant activity in the wetlands, and there's really the only one that JP pointed out that's there. The other one's on the opposite side of the ridge. So there's no flow in that direction from any of the development that's proposed. If any members have questions or?
I did have one question. The beach area, which would be left over, which I think is also part of the parcel, there's no activity out there.
That's correct.
And that's just going to remain as what, remaining land? Or
That is going to be mean. So let me just explain one quick thing about this. The road that goes through here is a public way. It's not actually a town road. So when the property was conveyed back in 1900, it was subject to the rights of the public to pass and repass. So the fee of the land is owned by Mr. Dragic or his LLC all the way to the water. We're presuming that at some point these people will have rights to the lake from their properties. They'll probably be incorporated into deeds and so forth. We haven't gotten that far down the road just yet in terms of that. But there's no development at all that's being proposed on the lake.
Yeah, I guess I kind of had a question along the same lines. So this is phase 5 of a proposal that
Correct.
has more phases after this, or?
I'm looking at the ceiling trying to envision. Actually, let me take a look at the front page.
I mean, if we're going to be looking at
So,
wetland mitigation.
right, so these are the other phases of the Nottingham subdivisions over here. This is it here, and I doubt that there's any other land. I don't think this is ours. So this would probably be the last phase of the subdivision. The other phases on the subdivision are over here, the Towers Ridge portion.
And so that largest lot, would that subdivide again?
The plan for that is to keep it as campground. They don't know what they're intending to do with it, but if you look at the section, the topo, the next one. You have a tremendous amount of ledge up here, and it gets real steep. And it's one of the reasons when they were looking at it, they said, you know what, leave it open. There have been some discussions, I think, with Mr. Mulholland as to keeping this as an existing campground sort of site at this point, but there are no particular plans. But developing for subdivision becomes almost prohibitive to get up there through the cost of blasting through that ledge.
If it were to be subdivided, it would come before us again.
We'd have to come back, right? Because if we were thinking where the other wetlands are, that's your 300 feet. So suppose you could develop up here without needing a wetlands review, but to get up there probably doesn't make sense, and that's partly why the client has scaled back to go into this area and reduce the number of lots. I've seen the Dravic survey or plan when it was done, and I think some of the lots were further back, and we just looked at it and said, or I should say, the client looked at it and said, it's not worth it, it's the further cost, so.
So there's 9 lots, but there's only 8 houses being proposed.
Right, so it'll result in 9 lots because the remaining land of about 60 acres will remain undeveloped, but it creates a lot.
Okay, and my another question is, there's a number of lots I've seen in town where they've been literally stripped of all the trees. And are you planning on eliminating a lot of the trees, particularly because you've got those 5 houses, they're going to pay for views of the lake. Are those trees going to be come down?
Basically, what we had proposed is that limits of clearing around where the development is going to take place. It hasn't already taken place. I mean, as you can see, there's been quite a bit of stuff that's been moved around out there in the first place. But basically, when we do this, we show an area of limits of clearing, driveway, house, septic, and that sort of thing, where the wells are. Now, what a homeowner does after that, I don't know. But when we propose something, this is what, and a number of times we go out and stake out the limits of clearing so the contractor knows that this is what was looked at with planning and wetlands, and this is what you intend to do.
Yes, Phyllis brings up a good point, but I think that's beyond the purview of what we're doing here. You know, once a homeowner has the place, they can do what they want, but they have to come before us should they decide they want to grind stumps or something.
Right, and the other issue, in terms of, we're more basically, we're not the builder, so what happens when a builder comes in, I mean, we have approvals from, we have planning applications with Ledgelight Health District, and they'll look at the area and say, you know, you need to have X area around the septic system and so forth cleared so that there's a reserve area. So some of that's going to happen, but yeah, we would typically do limits of clearing. You know, I don't know if in this particular proposal there are going to be limits placed on what can be cut after the property is sold. I know that's been the case in some of the other properties, the conservation on portions of the property. Sorry about that. But as you can see here, they're reasonably close to the road, so this area here is likely to be cleared, you know, because that's what's necessary for the house. But JP is right. I mean, even if we put restrictions on cutting up there, then it's up to either the town or the neighbors to try and enforce that.
And can you explain what the biofilter is? I mean, how it works and functions?
Unfortunately, Tim Navy, the engineer, was unable to be here this evening, and I really don't want to speak out of turn. But basically what it does is the water is kind of broken up into 2 drainage areas. Mm-hmm. One of them is going to be handled mostly by the rain gardens, because right now there's basically not that much sheet flow coming across the road at this time. The bulk of the water is coming down this roadway here and ending up in this wetlands down here. So the idea is to channel that into this biofilter so that it'll, first of all, slow the water down. Secondly, the way the level of the pipe is set, it gives the water a chance and the fines a chance to settle before it goes over in through the pipe and out into the wetlands, basically resulting in the water that's already coming down here stopping, being detained for a bit, cleaning up a little bit before it's discharged into the wetlands and before it's discharged into the lake. So basically cleaning the water before it goes into the lake.
Is there going to be any vegetation in that basin?
I believe there is, and I really don't want to speak out of turn, but generally in a biofilter, we have
I think it should be in the report, the drainage report that was submitted by Mr. Nick previously. So
part of this application? Is that part of this?
It is part of this application, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously with these rocks here, there's an issue with stormwater flow off the site, and if we're adding impervious surface, I just want to make sure that there's stormwater controls in place, that water's not going to flow across the street right into the.
Well, so the swale that you see in there, that's the one that the town constructed to take the water off the street and into Patagonia Lake. So ours is designed to trap it on the site, and as JP was saying, to contain the water for a period of time so that the silt material settle to the bottom of the biofilter, and then the water slowly flows out into the wetlands itself. They all end up in the same pipe underneath Upper Patagonia and go into the lake. But what we're proposing that would go through there based on the design is cleaner than what's just flowing straight off the site.
There's basically a raised structure, a catch basin that's not on the bottom of the pond, but up higher, such that when the water does get, and if it gets that high, a lot of times it'll come in and just settle without flowing out. But in the event of a larger storm, it gives it an opportunity to slow down and be detained for a while before it overflows that outfall into the wetlands.
So these lots are based on a 300-foot upland review area?
I'm sorry?
The lots are based on a 300-foot upland
Yes.
review area?
Yes.
So would this change if by chance that footage changed? Do you understand, Gary, what I'm saying?
If you increase the 300, or?
No, if you decrease it to 100?
If you went back to 100, here's your 100 foot right here. And I didn't do it over here because, from the lake itself, because it didn't make any sense for me to do that. But knowing that this is the area that we were concerned with, and knowing that that's where the water goes, this is where the 100 foot would be. And it doesn't, if you put your septic in reserve here, the only thing that would be affected in that 100 foot review area would be a driveway.
The lot layout will remain the same in
Oh.
either case.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And the same number of lots?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, as Paul pointed out, because of the topography, it just doesn't make any sense to try to put a road up on, you're going to be halfway sailing before you can get to a nice flat area, you know?
Would there be any blasting, or, since you're putting in?
Not at this point in time. The test holes that have been done out here were quite good, so we don't anticipate any of that. And also, based on the topography, just before it starts to go up is where we pretty much stop the back of the lawns.
And,
Right.
and these houses for the lots are based on a 4-bedroom house?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think what, if you recall from the sidewalk, what Tim said is the state, they always base them on a 4-bedroom, so that if somebody purchases it, they base them, they have the maximum that would be allowable. So if they do 3, they don't have to come back in, but if
Right.
they based it on 3 and they decided they wanted a 4-bedroom house, they've got to come back in, they've got to go back to the health department and everybody else, so,
Okay.
And is this area sewer?
no.
No, so it's septic.
Right. So I think if you recall, the commission members that were out for the sidewalk, where we're proposing houses, that flat area that I think you, Mr. Gaishel, was talking at the end of the sidewalk and where that building is forward from that area. And forward by meaning towards the street.
So as far as maintenance of this structure, who's responsible for that? The biofilter?
My understanding from my discussions with the engineer is that it's generally, it's designed to, I don't want to say maintain itself, but to have very little, if no, maintenance on it. And I believe that that's in his report where you talk about it, because they'll use native species to around that in order to absorb the water. That would be something in terms of with respect. So, as proposed, those are the houses. So the developer is going to retain title to that at this point. So it would be up to the developer to make sure that it's maintained.
If we were to go forward with this, I mean, it's not unheard of, as we've said before, to include things in the application, like we said, rain gardens, a guide on what rain gardens are and how to maintain them. Perhaps we could also suggest that homeowners receive some kind of guidance about maintaining such a biofilter.
Yeah, I don't see that's a problem. And deep, as we talked about it, the sidewalk has a whole booklet or informational package on that. I believe on Upper Patagoncet, when we were talking about lots 19, 21, and 23, we had initially proposed a rain garden for one of those, and the plan was to give the property owners who were going to purchase any of those lots the maintenance requirement, because there was originally planned a maintenance agreement for that the owners, because it was going to be on one of the individual lots, but shared by all 3 lots in terms of the drainage, that they were going to have a maintenance agreement for that. And we were going to give them the books, and I think we had said, fine, that's not a problem. We're happy to do that. In this particular case, it's not going to be on any of the individual lots that are being sold, so it would be ours, but because there's rain gardens on the others, I mean, we're happy to provide that kind of material to a homeowner, and I don't see that as being an issue, in terms of condition at all.
So we're here to decide whether or not to go forward to a public hearing. Some of the comments that were made that kind of sold the idea to perhaps me and Phyllis, who were at the site walk, were made by someone who's not here. As a matter of protocol, can those be part of our decision, or does Mr. May have to be here to give us an engineering report?
Well, you have his report, which was submitted in the document. I will note that town received that on Friday. The town engineer is in the process of reviewing it now. I would note that if we don't go forward with the public hearing, we have 65 days to render a decision on the application. It was technically received at our last meeting. So we're halfway in between that 65 days unless we go forward with the public hearing. I would note that the next regular scheduled meeting of the commission is October 18th due to the holiday the week prior. And the 65 days expire on October 13th. So depending on what the commission does, either way, we're going to need a special meeting to render a decision on this and get feedback from the engineer and or hold a public hearing.
So we would have to make a decision on this. If we say no public hearing, we would have to make a decision on this by October 13th.
Correct.
Did you say 13th or 18th?
October 18th is our next regular meeting, but October 13th is the 65 day.
Got it, okay, sorry.
And we haven't, the town engineer hasn't reviewed it yet, so we haven't gotten that feedback. I feel like the timeline's kind of tight.
A couple of weeks, I did ask them if you could get me a review by next Monday.
And if, and then
they
that,
would be able to go back and forth with comments.
right, because then they could provide their engineer to come to discuss with us, but then we'd have to make a decision that night.
Correct.
Okay.
Or at least, yeah, 13th.
That's only if we don't go forward with public hearing.
Right,
If
that's
we do go
separate,
forward with
right.
public hearing, we buy everyone a little bit of time,
Right.
minus.
Yeah, well.
But not yet.
In terms of the proposed work, I don't know that it should be indicated whether or not it's necessary to hold a public hearing for that level, although being on Lake Patagonia, which is a pretty prominent lake in town, it may very well be in public interest. The only other reason.
Yeah, I mean,
Based on our regulations. So, commission
because the public has no idea unless we bring it to
They're gonna have a sign.
the butter.
They're gonna have a sign.
Right, I mean, they had the agenda for, it's been posted for a week now. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting that we received the application, so that was the first public notice that there's something going on the property. Again, it's your discretion.
Yes, from my point of view, the question is there an adverse impact?
Right.
And once the town engineer has an opportunity to review the plan, it's basically cleaning up what's going into the town, not making it worse.
Right, but we haven't been able to see his input, and my concern is clearing along that whole road there and potential runoff into the lake. But again, I haven't seen the engineer's report, so do we have any opinions on this?
I think there's a public interest.
I was just gonna say, we as an agency represent the public. It would be in their best interest and our best interest to go forward with the public hearing, I think.
So would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we go forward with the public hearing.
I'll second. Phyllis.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so 4. So we would have to have that public hearing on October 13th?
Here's the Wednesday.
I'm sorry, am I saying the date?
Oh, the 18th is the next.
It has to be before that. So we have to have it the 4th.
Our special meeting on the 4th.
Our special meeting on October 4th.
October 4th. Okay.
Is that a Monday? Not just a...
It's Monday, yeah.
It is Monday, okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to, our engineer is a town councilor in Montville, and the town council, that's why he's not here tonight. They have a town council meeting on Monday.
Monday does not work.
No. I can check with him in the morning and let Gary know if that's a problem. And
Do you, could you be flexible and Gary, do they have the option to be flexible and say, okay, we'll do it on the 18th? The
Well,
applicant?
well, if you're going to a public hearing now,
Yeah, hold it here.
we'd have to ask the applicant for an extension time.
Yeah, I don't see that as a problem.
So if you wanted to move it to the 18th, we could, but I couldn't do that without an extension from the applicant.
We were discussing
Well, let me-
moving our agenda from the 18th to the 4th and canceling that meeting.
Canceling the regular meeting.
I can check with the engineer the first thing in the morning and see. I mean, I think if he has advance notice, he may be able to reschedule or avoid his town council meeting. This was just, we got the notice whenever, sometime last week or whatever. He's been traveling and so forth, and when I tried to get him here tonight, he said, I can't back out of this other meeting that I have as a town councilor. So I will find out and check with Gary, and if we need to give him an extension, whatever, I'm sure we can address that. All right?
We don't have to
So going forward, set the date now, and then we can always,
modify it later.
Modify, right.
Okay.
so as long as this public knows that October 4th will be a special meeting. That's
Do we have to make a motion for that?
Please.
Okay. I make a motion that we hold a public hearing for this on October 4th.
It's a Monday.
It's Monday. This is Doreen making a motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Phyllis, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
All right.
And if we could make sure that we have all the information, the engineer,
Yeah, we have all of that now, so.
yeah, for his, I know we're in limbo with engineers, right?
The town did.
Oh, we have
hire
a new engineer, that's right.
Only been on about 2-3 weeks now. His name is Alex Coates. He already has
Uh-huh.
So we come from
You can keep.
BL.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, where are we? So that was new business. So added to new business, we have Art Carlson. If you would like to come on up and discuss.
There's some right there.
Oh, you want, Art, do you want to use this easel?
We have.
Okay.
Hope the public can see as well.
Yeah.
I don't think we can see their plans.
My name is Art Carlson. I'm speaking I'm with two hats on tonight. East Lyme Land Trust hat, and I'm chairman of the Conservation Commission hat. What I want to talk about, and our approach here, is to tell you about a project that we're working on called the Hathaway Farm Project. And we're here because the town is going to have to, well, we hope they will, fund part of this project. And I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you the background of the whole thing. But that's the essence of this talk. Let me, have you, I don't know if you've probably all seen the PLCD. Okay. The PLCD embodies almost everything that the Conservation Commission has developed, including our open space plan. And in that open space plan, for the first PLCD, which was 12 years ago, we developed a list of 65 parcels that are worthy of preservation in this town, 65. And to see if they were worthy, we developed the criteria, the attributes of open space. Instead of just saying, well, there's a lot of birds there, or there's a lot of this there, or a lot of trees there, we developed a criteria which has been adopted by, well, certainly by the people who wrote the PLCD. And what we determined was the single most important characteristic of any piece of open space is drinking water quality and quantity to protect for our public drinking system or your private drinking system. Between air and water, if you miss out on either one of those, you've had the day. The second thing that we developed as open space attributes was access for the public to water. There ain't no lots left to buy on the lake or the ocean. So we look at open space, can people get access to water resource? Number 3, we look at the open space and say, is this farmland? And we do this by soil types. This is not, that would be a nice place for a farm. No, we look at the soil types. By the way, do you know how many soil types there are in this town? 90. Active and passive recreation. Does it provide for that? And active could be a baseball field, but also could be walking. And truth be matter, almost everything we look at is from a walking point of view. Forest blocks and greenways. What that basically says is one 100-acre spot is intuitively better than 100 one-acre spots or 200 half-acre. What used to be called open space in this town was quarter-acre lots in a subdivision behind 15 people's houses. It was meaningless. Unique geological features. If there are, happen to be, you can't justify that on any other reason other than sheer beauty. It's nice to have it there. So why bury it? Cultural and historical. Preserve the land and buildings of earlier times. That is how we got the Samuel Smith House. Okay, that's the Samuel Smith House right there. It met that criteria. And finally, open space, you look at it from a biodiversity point of view. Okay, and the first time I ever mentioned this to public, people jumped up and said, that's the craziest thing, that should be at the top of the list. My answer was two answers. E.E. Wilson from Harvard says, the essence of biodiversity is you have to have the land first. The other practical thing was, we got to raise $1 million for the property. Nobody's going to spend $1 million to preserve a vernal pool. Vernal pool will come along with the property. Okay, with that criteria, this Hathaway farm became number 1. Okay, now I'm going to show you where it is. These green plots are the various watersheds in town. This is the 4 Mile River watershed, Bride Lake watershed, dark green, Patagonia watershed, light green, Latimer Brook, dark blue, that's the Niantic River watershed. We get our public drinking water out of 2 watersheds, the dark green, the Patagonia, and the blue, the Bride Lake, okay? The people along this area here, Latimer's, they drink water that comes from Latimer's Brook and Cranberry Meadow Brook, and Dodge, and what's the, right here.
Darrell Pond?
Yeah, the Darrell Pond. Future water source could possibly become the 4 Mile River, okay? Okay, so now let me talk about, I said this is the top piece of property, and let me show you what this piece of property looks like. It's Patagonia Lake. This is property, by the way, Hathaway got this from King George, and it hasn't been surveyed until now. And how do we know it? Because it costs a lot of money to survey it. No, try to guess where the lines are. What's unique about this piece of property, well, there's a lot of uniqueness. I'm going to go through the uniqueness of it. Number 1, it's directly over one of the major aquifers that feeds all the wells in the Patagonia watershed. Okay? Number 2, it has 3,000 feet, more or less, of shoreline. 3,000 feet. In fact, we had a call from, I think it was the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who reviews the proposals that we sent into the deep. And they said, wait a minute, you have how many feet of shoreline? It was 3,000 feet, which made it, from a recreational point of view, enormous. It also has, for example, a 10-acre freshwater marsh, which is necessary, according to the bird guy at Deep, for migration birds. Okay? Let's see. And looking back into the POCD, you find that in a factor of 2 to 1, people want more open space. By the way, if you ask them how much is too much, they won't know. And if you ask them how too little, they won't know. But they know that most of them, 2 to 1, want more. Let me tell you how we got into a little bit of a jam. Up until, for years, the Deep has been providing up to from 60 to 65% of the book value for open space. And book value, it's not a guess. We paid $11,000 for 2 Yellow Book surveys. So it's really, you beat down the price to make sure it's exactly true. Just before we were going to get our award, so the asking price was 1.6 million roughly. And so 65% of that, or 60, is about 1.1 million. And when we fully expected to get pretty darn close, because of the 42 proposals, we were ranked very high. In fact, we asked, are we first? And they said, well, we can't tell you if you're first, but you're right up there. Phew, we sigh of relief. 3 weeks before the money was awarded, we got a letter that says, we've changed the rules. The maximum you could get is $400,000, which turns out to be about 22% of what we asked. Okay? Well, that put us in a crisis mode because we have to close on this thing relatively quick. And that's where the town comes in. There is a small budget for the town. We're going to be asking for more. And what we have to prove to the Deep is that the town can close on this piece of property. Okay? Now, just a word on how much it costs each person. If we bond, the town bonds $1 million at 2% money for 20 years, each person in this room, taxpaying, you will pay about $5 a year for 20 years. Okay? So that does $5 a year. And I checked, I couldn't find anything you can buy for $5. Also, there's one last point. One of the comments I've heard for years is you're taking money off the tax rolls. Well, it turns out there's been an economic study done called the Cost of Community Services. It stood the test of time. It's been used for 40 years. And towns this size, it's been done in 8 towns our size in Connecticut. And on average, for every $1 a taxpayer like me or you put in, they get back $1.15 in services. Okay, you get back more in services more than you pay in. So it's not true that if you put land in open space, it's going to raise the taxes. In fact, houses that are next to open space usually increase in value between 5 and 10%. That being said, that's the total background of this issue. So it's vital for our water protection system. In fact, let me go just back to this thing. In this watershed, we've got 1,800 acres of Yale. So far, that's open. I think it will be. We're going to add, here's Yale. The East Lyme Land Trust has 35 acres. We hold the papers on that, and we would get this piece. That becomes a 250-acre block. So basically, we're building a reservoir system, right? Now, why are we doing it now in 2021? Because they didn't do it in 1921. Okay, we're playing catch-up ball here. Okay, it's that simple. So in closing, I'll certainly entertain questions. One other thing, let me talk about just the forest here. This forest is very mature. Only 10% of the forests in the state of Connecticut have this age of trees. It hasn't been logged in over 100 years. Okay, so we're pushing also not only the recreational part, but the educational part of this thing. It has multiple uses. And I think if I say, oh, what happens if we don't get this? If we don't get this bonding? And I'm confident that we will, because 2-to-1 people want this. If we don't, the DEP takes back the money in time. And if that happens, we lose our place in rank. And I can pretty much guarantee that it won't be sitting there very long. Okay? And what we don't need is more buildings, more impermeable surfaces brought into the active watershed from which we get our public water supply. Okay? Have I covered all the points? Because what we want to ask you is, we want to ask you, my commission will certainly do this, we're asking you, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission, and Finance to write a letter to the Board of Selectmen calling out the importance of this piece of property to be preserved. Basically not for me, but for everybody who comes after. Okay. Any questions, I'll be happy to field them.
Can you orient me for where exactly this property is? I see Upper Pat Road there, and then Scott
What's your question?
Road. So, like, where are the orchards? If that's in between, right?
If I take this, so north is really the top. Here's Lake Patagonia. This is to the north of the lake. The orchards are going to be further.
Oh, yeah, to the west.
Okay.
Yes. The orchards are to the west, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if you can make out this. This actually has the parcel lines on it. So here's the lake, and this parcel runs right through here.
And
these orange pieces are owned by Yale.
And in that watershed, you saw that. And here's the Hathaway part. And see the size of the aquifer here?
So the speckled dot.
And see, here's the problem. We got I-95 going through this thing. Boy, there's an oil spill. We're in big trouble. Okay? The strength of this is north of 95 and north of the Post Road. Okay? And we've got to really factor that in when we look at drinking water supply. Okay.
So this is, the parcel is 250 acres?
No, well, the Hathaway is 120.
Oh,
But when you look at the forest block aspects of it, what that is, there's very few houses on that thing, so you've got a watershed, that's pretty much virgin. Okay? What you're worried about in the watershed, I'm not too worried about people dumping stuff out of a second-story window. That doesn't happen. You change the runoff pattern. So that rain that used to come down and soak into the ground, it doesn't. It hits the roof, goes down the asphalt driveway, and it's gone. Very clear studies, Chesapeake Bay, how you can degrade the quality of water very easy by increasing the impermeable surfaces by about up to 30%. Okay? Right now, it's the natural impervious surface in town, natural, without roads, is about 3 or 4%. In fact, the 4 Mile River is 4%. That's almost a virgin territory. Okay?
We've seen, the studies have shown that increased impervious surface above 10% within the watershed is a degradation directly correlated to waterfall.
You're going down. And think about it. If you took that whole green watershed and paved the whole thing, well, first off, nothing would seep in, and it would rush out to sea. We got to try to hold this back. And that's where the water gardens come in. By the way, they work.
The rain gardens?
I find it hard to believe that they work the way they do, but they do. So there's a lot more to be done in town on
Does the
that.
town put aside in their budget for purchase of land? Because is it Old Lyme or Lyme that puts $1 million aside or something?
Lyme typically puts a lot aside. We do have in our budget, in the CNRE, which is the Capital Non-Recurring Expenditure Fund, there is a line item, it's been there 4 open space acquisitions. I don't know exactly how much is in that.
About 290,000. It started out as $1 million about 10 years ago, and it's been eaten away. It's been one of our charges to get the town to, we should have an established open space committee who just looks at, that's what Lyme does. And he's successful. We're playing catch-up ball here.
So
But we're
would this
accurate.
have to go to a referendum, or when would it have to?
Most likely it will.
If the town's going to be spending any money on it, yes.
Yeah,
But at this moment, all we're worried about is.
Pardon me?
But I said at this moment, you're just asking us to write a letter to the Board of Selectmen in favor of this project.
Yes. What we have to show that the boards and commissions who are knowledgeable are for it. Okay? We will also have a public forum at the end of September at the senior center.
Okay. Well,
And this work
for efficiency's sake, going forward, we should perhaps make a motion whether or not we want to write this letter or draft
Would the letter come from,
Your commission.
I draft it.
Perfect.
okay, like it wouldn't be us individually writing letters?
you,
It-
Lorraine.
No, it'd be on behalf, one letter from the commission in support of the project.
Okay.
We have it drafted for you. You can look at it at the next meeting. And
Well, I would like to propose a motion that we draft a letter to the Board of Selectmen in support of this project.
I'll second.
I can guarantee you that the science is correct. And don't even think about that as an issue. It's
Well,
not.
and I appreciate that this parcel connects other land trust
That's the,
properties, because the connectivity of these spaces are critical.
it's critical.
So
In
I
fact-
think that that's very important.
In fact, we rezoned some land in this town. In fact, I was behind it, based on the soil type. We could show that the soil type, you couldn't dispose of soil in a quarter-acre lot with that kind of dirt. Okay. But
All right, I believe we have a motion and it's seconded.
Yeah,
Should we
all
have
those in
further
favor?
discussion or should we?
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your work. I think this is very important for our town.
Thanks, you got us.
Yeah.
We're sticking with the science.
Yes, that's, we
Exactly.
appreciate
Geez,
that you're
I think
doing
I've heard that before.
that. All right, so that brings us to pending applications. We have the application of Howard Hale, applicant Habitat for Humanity, owner, to conduct regulated activities, including but not limited to construction of 2 new proposed single-family dwellings and associated appurtenances. At property identified in the application as 99, 101, and 103 South Beechwood Road, East Lyme Assessors Map 7.14, lots 43, 42, and 41. I don't know if you guys saw, we have a potential approval and denial letter here. So the public hearing's closed, and it's just for our discussion today.
So at the last meeting, I directed to draft the resolutions and findings. Well, just rather than reading all the findings,
Yeah.
they're the same throughout, with the exception of lot 2. So,
Can I ask a question before you
yes.
launch into this? Like, I know the public hearing is closed. I'm curious to know what happened in that wetland in this last, like, humongous storm and stuff. Like, is there...
I didn't actually go out and visit the site. I was referring to some others. I have to refer to the applicant. I can't really take any additional testimony.
Yeah, that's why I was like, okay.
So I might be able to speak to this because I was actually going around town canvassing and I ran into some homeowners who were very upset because their home had taken 5-6 feet of water and many of their treasured belongings were being thrown out into a dumpster. And
Yeah, I was one.
well, I'm very sorry to hear that, but it made I had this in the back of my mind as I was doing that. I had their reactions and the things they were saying to me. And the first thing they said was they blamed the pipe, and I went and looked at the pipe, and the pipe was humongous, you know. And I mean, if we were to make this pipe any larger, it would be like a mound for people to drive over on the
Yeah.
causeway where it was. So it kind of got me thinking, like, what is our task as a commission? And the other thing this gentleman said to me was, this house should not have been permitted to be built here. They knew at some point this would happen, right? So I guess what I was thinking about this all month, and I think I have arrived at the understanding that we, like everyone, are grappling with a new climate reality, right? Like, we can't predict what's going to happen, but we know some stuff might happen that's going to be severe. So what we as an agency can do is say, does this have an impact on the wetland right now? You know, going forward, I wish we had a mechanism for helping people out of these jams, but I just don't think that's within our scope or our capabilities. And we can ask questions like, what happened?
But ultimately,
Well, who
if
knows
they
what's
choose
gonna
to buy the like, they're taking that risk on that.
Yes.
So
But if you look at the minutes from last month's items, the lot, one of the neighbors said that the water does pool after a rain there. So you've got to ask, like, where is that water going when you've got these driveways, 2 houses, and probably a couple sheds?
Yeah, and that's, you know, I was looking at the stormwater design for this is for the 10-year storm event. And that will cause some downstream flooding with the addition of the impervious surfaces. And that is would the town be liable, Gary? Do you know if construction occurs and then flooding downstream happens?
I don't believe the town would necessarily be liable when they're accommodating, they're building lots of records, and they're entitled to something, right? So they're attenuating a 10-year storm. Anything above and beyond that, you would know that there's a potential impact downstream. It would be worse than the existing conditions. I couldn't say for certain. In terms of what I can say is that the increase in runoff based on the proposed is a 0.35, I think it was. Increase, yeah, 0.35 cubic feet per second.
But that is almost 50% increase. Right now it's only 0.8. It's 0.8 currently, and the proposed is going to be 0.35 on top of that. So it's 50% increase from what currently flows off. Close.
My understanding was that there isn't much flow out right now, which is why water is pooling there to begin with. The words that stuck in my mind from the last meeting were low quality wetland.
Mm-hmm.
And the understanding that almost, I know this sounds kind of paradoxical, and maybe even against what our mission is, but to build on this would be to destroy part of the wetland in the sake of perhaps making it better. You know, creating an environment where there aren't giant pools of water for mosquito, because the homeowner it would behoove them to get rid of this water, to make sure it goes elsewhere, to take mitigation steps, to disrupt that kind of breeding ground. So that's another part of where I came to this. I really thought about this a lot, meditated a lot on this. I want you to know that. Yes, we would have to give permission for the builder to damage the waterway, but I think it's of low quality, and there's a likely chance that it will be improved, thusly passing the bar that we have to clear. Anything beyond that, this is where I really struggled, and I said, you know, what's going to happen downstream? What's going to happen? This, that, and the other. We can't necessarily always go that direction with our thinking, because like that 10-year storm, that 40-year storm, the 50-year storms or whatever, they're going to come. And what we have to look at, I think, is the quality of the wetlands there now, and what will it be if this construction goes forward.
Well, we also have an alternative choice. There could be just one house put there.
You mean our alternate choice would be to reject the proposal as it is and ask them to resubmit?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess getting to my memo, the last 2 pages, the last 2 approved. The resolution lots of findings include the requirement for E&S bond in the amount of $10,000, as well as indicating that there is an improvement feasible alternative yielding a two single-family dwelling footprints of 840 square feet on land primarily on the west of the watercourses that will eliminate and further reduce the potential for impact to the wetland watercourses. Whereas, the resolution indicated as demonstrated by Exhibit A, a feasible improvement alternative exists, specifically that the applicant has control of all three lots. The number of homes could be reduced to one single-family dwelling with an 840 square foot footprint, thus reducing the total area of the wetlands and volume of storm runoff, possibly decreasing special conditions.
So the idea would be by going forward with one house, you would reduce the impervious surfaces and the runoff from the roof.
The quandary is that you've got three existing lots of record.
I'm saying, say it again?
You have three existing lots of record. So, in theory, right, they could apply, they could just come back and apply for each individual lot and say, oh, we have control. So that's something to consider going forward.
Are we within our authority to make such a recommendation? I mean, you as the engineer or as the agent might.
The agent.
Yeah, you can do it.
So I will indicate section 10 of our regular considerations for a decision. Section 10.4. Section 10.3. In case of an application which received a public hearing, pursuant to a finding by the agency that the proposed activity may have a significant impact on the wetlands and watercourses, the permit shall not be issued unless the agency finds on the basis of the record that a feasible improvement alternative does not exist. In making this finding, the agency shall consider the facts and circumstances set forth in subsection 10.2 of this section. The finding and the reasons therefore shall be stated on the record in writing. In case 10.4 is in the case of an application which is denied on the basis of a finding that there may be a feasible improvement alternatives to the proposed regulated activity which have less adverse impact on the wetlands or watercourse, the agency shall propose on the record in writing the types of alternatives which the applicant may investigate, provided this subsection shall not be construed to shift the burden from the applicant to prove that he is entitled to the permit or to present alternatives to the proposed regulated activity. So you do have the authority to propose that.
Sounds like.
I would note that I don't know that I have to go back through the record and see if there was discussion, maybe the minutes, maybe the tapes, regarding the possibility of reducing it to one home. I don't know if that was presented.
I think Gary brought it up.
Yeah, Gary discussed it a bit.
Yeah, a couple people, because then they said, well, that's not our purview, that's the applicant's to decide.
Yeah.
It was discussed.
That's why I added it here, because I was pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
Because then the applicant would have to decide, might just say, well, this isn't worth all this money, so
Right.
if I can only build one house, forget it, and then
Mhm.
the whole thing goes away, right? Like if they decided that, but that would be their decision, right?
Yeah, I've been with you. I've been struggling with this one.
As I noted, again, because we did hold a public hearing, we closed it at our last meeting. We have 65 days to render a decision. We're going to stop October 13th again. If you want to have more discussion, maybe with Gary present, certainly you can do that. You have to table it to a special meeting.
We do have the special meeting.
I mean,
So you can move forward.
this is we don't have much else on the agenda for today, right? So if we have, why don't we
Right.
take this time to discuss it now and instead of putting it off?
I'm happy to
I
keep
know.
talking if you guys want to keep listening.
Yeah,
I would note that if the commission were to approve it, that there is a recommendation for $10,000 erosion and sedimentation control bond. Town engineer memo also indicated public improvement bond. I think that is
But the erosion bond is only good while they're building.
Correct, yeah, we did that back.
So,
in the Delegation.
a year down the road, you could have all this water because it has no place to go, and it could be flooded into people's basements, the neighbors.
Right, and then-
I think every wetland has a value. And I also feel that, people own property, they have the right to put a house. But I think, we have the alternative.
And also, when you talk about low value, I mean, what is value to who? I mean, it has certain value to us, but there's also an ecological value. I mean, all those mosquitoes that I referenced earlier, they're part of a larger ecosystem too. So I guess low value is not the word I should hone in on.
Yeah, and it was stated there was a vernal pool nearby, and wetlands do communicate, so, I mean.
You've got trees, and if they're cut down, then you've got carbon release. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff to think about.
The term may be function, so
Mhm.
it's a lower functioning wetland. The function that it's providing is what we need to look at. And in this case, it may not be so much habitat as it is filtration.
Mhm.
I mean, wetlands we know are carbon salts. So in nitrogen, phosphorus, those things we want theoretically come to the wetlands to absorb them before they hit the water.
But this one, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say low value, low function.
And function in terms of probably more of a macro scale, or macro vertebrates, right? How many birds, how many other creatures, deer, that they're not using it as they would a forest block. So its function is less than, say, maybe the wetlands to the north, which I think tie into the larger forest block. So I think it's important to note the terms used by applicant, the context in which it's being referred to, low function or low value. In this case, I mean, well, they may believe it's low value, but I think it's still performing a pretty high function, which is filtration. Ultimately, the water makes its way to Long Island Sound, and I know the state goes above and beyond to try to protect the sound. So that's, to me, it seems like having a wetland there to absorb this runoff is prudent. So I think the plan that's before the commission was designed with that in mind. The question here is the volume and the impact of filling the wetland to create what they're going to create downstream. Is that better?
So the question that sits at the heart of everything we do is, does this damage the wetland? I think that's undisputable at this point. It does. So where do we go forward with that? I mean, do we just say flat no? It damages the wetland. Does that mean we can't develop anywhere on wetlands? And where does the right of the town fall compared to the right of the individual landowner?
Pay taxes on
Well,
this.
again, I go back to the statute, which said the activity is regulated, not prohibited, and then the agency, in making its decision, the agency has to find on the record that a feasible prudent alternative exists. Not that it just damaged the wetland. We just know that there's a direct impact. So that's okay. That can actually be permitted. However, is there a feasible and prudent alternative?
Well, wouldn't that, in this case, what they're proposing would be the mitigation and the fact that they're only building on 2 of the 3 lots?
Right.
That would be the the alternative, I guess, that they're presenting. And then we could, if we don't like that, we could deny it, and then we could
So they
could come back with something else,
If
but.
they deny, they could come back, next month with a new application with a recommendation or whatever the feasible and prudent alternative is. You could theoretically deny that one again, as it's happened in the past, because the commission found another feasible and prudent alternative. I would just go back to 16 Brightwater as the example. It was denied 3 times before it was overturned in court. On the third appeal, the third denial, the applicant appealed it to the court. The court remanded it back to the town, saying, well, it's a lot of record, entitled to something, issue a permit. So they issued, I think it was a 640 square foot footprint for that site.
But there was no alternative. It wasn't like there was another lot. Actually, we looked at this property a couple years ago, where they put like a little thing in the back. It would be interesting to see what that property is today, because I'll bet they've got a lot of water problems.
I'm going to reach out to him because we did do some additional permitting. I think we had a sidewalk, if you recall, the patio drain. They had drainage issues we were there for. So we'll see. I'll reach out and see how they fare. But that being said, again, Section 10 says the agency shall take into consideration all relevant facts, circumstances, including but not limited to the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on the wetlands and watercourses, the applicant's purpose for, and any feasible proven alternatives to the proposed regulated activity, which alternatives would cause less or no environmental impact to the wetlands and watercourse, the relationship between the short-term and long-term impacts of the proposed regulated activity, and the maintenance and enhancement of long-term productivity of such wetlands and watercourses. You can consider this. And any irreversible or irretrievable loss of wetlands or watercourse resources which would be caused by the proposed regulated activity, including the extent to which such activity would foreclose a future ability to protect, enhance, or restore such resources, and any mitigation measures which may be considered as a condition of issuing a permit for such activity, including but not limited to measures to 1, prevent or minimize pollution or other environmental damage, 2, maintain or enhance existing environmental quality, or 3, in the following order of priority: restore, enhance, create productive wetland and watercourse resources. You can also consider the character and degree of injury to or interference with safety, health, and the reasonable use of property, which is caused or threatened by the proposed regulated activity. That's a broad one. And then the impacts of the proposed regulated activity on the wetlands and watercourses outside the area for which the activity is proposed. In this case, the wetlands say to the north, but further to the house above, you can consider the impact of that, although it's upgrading. So, but you said we did hear that there was a vernal pool and there could be a connection. So maybe that could be impacted. Although if we're impacting a species, it's different than the wetlands. That only count. So if there's a hydrologic connection between the two, then maybe we can make that count. So those are the criteria which we consider. That's helpful.
So would it make sense to delay this for the next meeting since we're still within the guidelines?
You'd have to have a special meeting.
Oh. Aren't we already doing a special meeting?
For the public hearing, yes. And then if you were to table discussion on this, because we still have time, although we don't have enough time to get to our next regular meeting, which is the 18th, so we have to put it on a special meeting again there if you want to do.
For the 4th.
Yes. 4th, you want to continue deliberations. So.
Yeah, I mean, my challenge with this one is that it's 3 building lots, which I don't know who made these building lots because they're all wetland. But if they walk away, someone could come and say, I want to buy the lot in the middle, and then we'd have to say, okay, you can build a house on it, right? I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah, eventually we'd have to permit something. And the question is, do we end up with, 3 bright waters?
Yeah, right. Because ideally, I think one house is the ideal. You lessen the stormwater impacts. You maintain more of the wetland. It's more likely the 2-to-1 ratio, which most of our applications are.
But having
there's
one house,
3 building
the person has to.
So
You have to find somebody who's willing to buy all 3 lots and only build one house. We don't know if this applicant is
Right,
willing to do
right,
that. But,
right. Right, I know, that's
maybe
why I'm
it's
really
like,
struggling with this one.
this is a
So,
best case scenario.
so Gary, you said that
Yeah.
these lots were approved as lots prior to the Clean Water Act, I think in 1972 or something. Do you think at this point with the new regulations that these would actually be lots or that size? Are they 40-foot lots?
They're 50 by 100. So under the current regulations, they never perk, so you never get a septic in there, which in the sewer district, a new subdivision being proposed, they have to show B100A compliance before the town would allow them to connect to the sewer. Meaning you can demonstrate that you could fit a house lot with a septic there. The land is going to be able to support that, it's a building lot. Now you can tie your septic. So basically, it's called induced growth. When we signed our sewer contracts, the state said, hey, we're going to lend you some money for this. You can't have this induced growth. Just because we're running sewer doesn't mean all this land now becomes developable when it previously wasn't. So we follow this methodology of showing P100A compliance with the health department. And if they can demonstrate that, I would say, because the land's all wet, you're not going to, the soil's not going to hurt. So it would never be suitable for a septic. The benefit here to the landowner is that it was approved prior to that. I think it was Giants Neck. It was a beach community. There were beach bungalows initially, never contemplated year-round residency until probably more recent, in the last 30, 40 years.
All right, so
they came to be.
Sounds like the question is that everybody's struggling with this. We know it's not an ideal situation, but we know that there are pluses and minuses. Do you think we can arrive at a decision tonight? And if not, then we should make a motion to put it on the agenda at the special meeting, unless someone else sees it a different way.
I just have one question, because I'm going back into the like, I guess the notes and the papers that were all submitted. So it says 1,680 square feet are going to be filled, but what I was trying to find is what is the area of the wetland that's going to be remaining, you know, based on what the maps are, like that.
Like, what is the percentage of disturbance?
Well, I was trying to, like, are they filling? Yeah. You know, like, okay, so half of it is getting filled. Because I know that it says, like, how much square footage is going to be remediated with plantings, but I was trying to find out what the square footage of the wetland remaining will be.
How much is being filled?
1,680 square feet.
Is this it? Is it the 970 square foot of wetland mitigation here and 822 of wetland mitigation here?
No, because that's going to be the upland plantings. So that's the
Right.
mitigation area. So
Right.
what I'm trying to figure out is what is left.
Oh,
Of the
what
wetland.
was already here.
Yeah. Because this is mitigation, but
Well,
it's
that's
not
what-
actually wetlands.
A little bit of it is, I think. I think it's here.
See, because I thought these were the wetland boundaries. That's the wetland boundary.
Oh, yeah, it's right. You're right. Yeah.
So they're mitigating by doing,
Making that bottom one bigger.
right, but this is not necessarily going to be, I mean, I guess it could be
No,
on
you're right, because
wetlands,
it's
but,
not wetland soil, they're just
it's
putting
just-
plantings in.
right,
Yeah, so it's more, I think it's more really to manage the stormwater versus replace with functioning wetland.
yeah.
Soil.
Because
Otherwise you'd have to
originally I
remove the
was,
soil
I was
for new soil.
confused,
Right.
and I thought the mitigation was creating wetlands, but then I realized that I was wrong, and that it's just
It's
planting.
replacing the function of this wetland, correct? Not
But it's-
creating.
It's not creating additional wetlands.
Right.
And I think because we discussed this and there wasn't enough soil there anyway to dig up to create a wetland, it wouldn't have been.
I'd have to go back to the record to see about that, but I do know some of the discussion was additional disturbance. So in order to
Yeah.
create a wetland, they had to clear basically the whole lot.
That's
Mhm.
what I was getting to, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
establish it, so I think the sentiment was better not to do that, keep the tree canopy and won't insert planting where we can.
Right. Okay, so back to my original question was how much of the wetlands will be left was what I was trying to,
But I'm looking at the plan, and I don't see a total for
I couldn't find it either.
the existing wetland, how large it is. I don't see a note on the plan. Here we go. Just says 1,108 wetlands to be built. I have a scale I can just put down.
I mean, looking at the picture,
1,700 to the north, and so you're just figuring the calculating the area of the wetland on that last lot.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't really, it's not that important. I just like to see the numbers, but it's really not that big of a deal. What?
You'll be losing wetlands.
Yeah. I guess I was trying to see, like, is it half? Is it like we'll be left with a quarter? Will be, you know?
Well, you know, you got 300 feet on the south side, a little over 10 feet on the north side, and it's roughly 50 feet wide. So, 50 by 10 is 500 square feet, plus if you add in additions, probably like another 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, I guess back to Jason's. What do we think? Are we gonna make a decision? I mean, I haven't fully read through the approval denial, since we just got it.
That's true.
I kind of want to make sure that I don't want to approve it's going to take a bit to read through this.
But if we do parse through that, and it needs revision, can we make revision?
You can make revisions to the memo and change it, and maybe in your motion that you read,
But-
you want to make your revisions.
But we couldn't do that unless we were in session, unless we were having a formal meeting. Like, we can't do that over email. That has to
Right.
happen
We'd have to
something
go
right
through
here.
this right now.
Yeah.
I don't
What do
know.
you think?
I think
I-
that's a valid point, that we haven't had much time to figure out how to work with this, and that if we are going to amend this, we would need to talk about it in a meeting. We could either sit here and parse through it over the next couple hours, or we could push to this special meeting, which would be a more favorable way of dealing with this particular thing, the memo.
Right, and our chair is not here as well, assuming he'd be here at the next meeting.
You're doing a wonderful job, though.
I mean, I know I guess we're within the time frame, but I always feel like bad when we drag things out.
Yes, yes.
So,
Yeah, no, agreed.
you know, it's not fair to the applicant
No,
that.
it's not. But our charge is to represent the public's interest in waterways and these inland wetland. So I know it's a total drag to have all this kind of bureaucracy looking at this sort of thing, but that's what we're here for. If that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do.
And that's only, 3 weeks away?
Unless you want to roll through this thing right now. I mean, we could take it point by point.
It's 9 o'clock.
So maybe we should put it to a motion and see where members stand. I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we take time to review the findings in this memorandum, put it on the agenda for our October 4th special meeting. Do you need more for a motion than that?
Well, what are we reviewing? I mean, I think Gary's kind of made it, clear in his memo.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to see it go to the next meeting, so our chair is here, hopefully.
So, is that,
Well,
will you second the motion?
Yeah, do we have a second? Need a second.
Can I second it?
So what are you
Well, I
seconding?
haven't,
We had a
so
discussion.
that we're going to the next meeting to make our ultimate decision.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
there you go.
I think we would, I just received this about, just a couple hours before the meeting, and I would like to read through all the findings and make sure that I'm in agreement, and
Mhm.
so October 4th, we'll make our final decision.
So does that mean in October 4th we have 2 meetings?
We'll put it on one agenda, special meeting agenda. We're going to have a public hearing
Okay,
And then
perfect.
regular meeting items will be this application, along with anything else, so that, yeah, we have nothing else. So, maybe my report, and I address some of the,
Mhm.
I have a question about procedure. Can this be shared with members who are not currently at this meeting?
yeah, it's public information. So I was gonna put it up on the website, I was having some technical difficulties getting it to load, so I just did the hard copy for now. Hopefully, as soon as I get back, we can work that out, get it up to the website, but we'll be sure to get Dave and Gary copies, as they're not here, as well as Marjorie and Sandy.
Well, Marjorie is off. She resigned.
She resigned, yeah.
And I believe Dr. Mack is supposed to be on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we have a motion. All those in favor?
Hey,
I'm gonna
You can abstain.
abstain.
Okay. 4 and 1 abstain. So I apologize, but we're gonna go a couple more weeks. We just have to read through. I just want to make sure we're completely covered here. All right.
What's next?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. All right, so next would be the application of the East Lyme Inland Wetlands Agency to amend the East Lyme Inland Wetlands and Watercourses regulations to add section 9.3 requiring a posting of a sign for applications requiring a public hearing.
Did we already do that?
Yeah, we're all set,
Next
right?
page.
You already voted, just after.
Oh, we already did, so I didn't know if we need to officially.
No, you already did it with the motion.
Done.
Okay.
You put it here in case we skip that, and we go right, if you get a packed, really packed one, we might just wait till we get to it again.
Got it. Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
Excuse me, I just want to say have a good day.
Thank you.
too.
Thank you.
Sir.
It was a very learning experience here.
Great. We're all learning.
Yes.
I'm wondering where you're gonna join, John.
Huh?
There's vacancies.
Come on board.
You know what, I'm retired now, so.
It's a perfect time.
Exactly.
No excuse. You have no excuse. I gotta work at 5 a.m. so
Yeah.
you have no excuse.
Can we make a motion to get him on?
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, no old business reports. I have no chairman's report. Gary, inland wetlands.
I don't have any report that I haven't issued any permits since our last meeting. I have 3 on my desk. One for a new deck, one for Wetlands Road, soils testing that we heard about, and we built an addition at 206 Blossom Place. So I have to look at those. I have not looked at them. They're a couple weeks old. That's just my math. We also have in our line, our budget, Board of Finance had authorized $16,000 for additional help.
Helper, right.
So I'm trying to figure out how to best utilize that fund. It's a little bit of money, not a whole lot. I did the math, a part-time position comes out $5 an hour.
$5 an hour.
For if you were to get part-time for
Right.
for the year.
Hope there's
So
tips.
let's cut that in half.
Yeah, really.
It boils down to
It's
minimum
such a
wage
bad
is
deal.
$13.
Yeah.
So I think where I'm looking at it, $13 and the 16, and maybe some internship opportunity. I don't think I'm going to find
Paid internship.
people- paid internship.
There you go.
wanting to do-
Stipends.
Well, it'll be a stipend.
Yeah.
It really is a stipend. It
Yeah.
really is.
Sort of find someone who may be retired with some experience, who said, hey, I have nothing else to do, I'll go run around for you, while you do the paperwork. In that case, we have, like in our building department, we have 2 part-time assistant building officials who do primarily most, majority of inspections. Each obviously part-time, so there's some benefits in the town, that way, pay for benefits.
Sure.
But again, they're making a part-time salary, so they're dividing on, years, it's essentially a full-time salary in half, where $16,000 is really not a full-time salary. But that said, my intentions are to go out with a proposal. I'll hit UConn and the listserv for internships and see where we can come up there.
Sure.
The other alternative is trying to contract an agreement with the Council of Governments where they could provide a planner or someone periodically. The estimate they gave me, though, was more like $25,000. And their concern was, because they have the same 35-hour work week, that they would eat up most of their planners' time. It's like, just
Fair guy. Yep.
So, well, there hasn't been any expenditure of that money, right? We'll just spend that money as quickly as I can because I need that help.
Yep.
Things are just taking a long time. So, we'll plug on through.
Can I ask, were you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. This is more procedural, I guess. So when someone goes and does something and then files the permit after the fact, like what, do they pay a fine? Do they?
They can. We could find them. If we found them, whatever they did was egregious.
I don't know if he's done anything. I didn't know what he did wrong. That's where I was getting. I was like, is this the noise? Is it the noise? I didn't know what the deal
No, he
was.
cleared all the grubs along there's a watercourse, I guess, that's there.
I guess I'll have to go look at it.
She's
or
worried
something.
about.
I don't understand why she didn't talk to
Yeah,
the
but she
landowner
did talk to Gary.
to find
That
out
was the
what's
thing.
going on.
She did.
Never sent.
She may have tried to reach out to them. I know she reached out to the town early on and let us know. I indicated, and typically, I've never required someone to get a permit for soil testing. That said, our neighboring communities, if something like this comes up, we make the homeowner or landowner get the permit for the testing and to just stabilize the area when it's done. So I felt that was an appropriate thing to do in this case. They submitted their application, was I notified them that, hey, you're doing work without a permit.
Yeah.
File
All right.
an application. So reluctantly, they went, okay. Who told on us?
Oh, there you go.
So I had an FOI request for those emails.
Oh no!
no.
Oh no!
well.
See, there you go.
And again, the attorney represents, I was going to say something, but Mr. Gary represents the landowner.
Oh jeez.
We've all partners.
Oh man, small.
His managing member is Kristen Clark, and I forget her first name, but her last name is Harney's, Steve Harney's.
Huh?
So, in conjunction with the land trust, I guess is involved. Essentially, what they're trying to do is carve off a few lots along the roadside and preserve them.
Yeah, because I've heard there's been signs posted up there that say land trust.
So,
Is this Walnut Hill?
this is Holmes Road.
Holmes Road.
So that big orange piece on the map there that was approved for senior housing and
Oh,
golf
yeah.
course,
Yep, yep.
they're currently in front of the zoning commission to rezone that back to R80. Means
Residential. Oh
the only
yeah.
reason I can think of is in that configuration you can't subdivide.
Oh.
But as an R80 you can apply for lots.
Oh yeah.
So in that configuration you got to get zoning approval for a multifamily commercial type development.
And that's where the soil.
So that's where they were doing it. On
Testbits
the
were?
north side of the, I think it was on the north side of the road, but it could have been
Okay.
but up on Holmes Road, if you drive up there, you'll see it. Okay, that's what they did.
So I guess for your question, typically they would get fined if they were doing work before the permit, but in this case, they were asked to get a permit after finding out, because typically
I would
we don't
have said to the letter, that you're
require
in
them.
violation.
Yeah.
Either come into compliance by applying for a permit, or
But we've never fined that I remember.
Yeah.
the only individual we fined was Robert Barbera. He was the he
Crescent
replaced-
Beach?
He knocked Crescent Beach. He knocked down the elms and built the two homes.
Yeah.
We fined him because he was doing work, I guess, differently than his permit required.
Oh.
His permit required him to cut the Phragmites. Instead, he pulled them out and he neglected to put in a turbidity curtain in the pond. So those two items, the commission felt like, okay, here's your fine.
And what about Stonehenge, the place across from the dump?
The Weiss property, yes. So I did ask them.
Oh, have you seen his rocks?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, he's got them all lined up.
They sent,
It's like art.
Go drive by that.
I know.
so we did issue a inland wetlands permit for a 5-lot subdivision, and he's going forward that pending now before the planning commission. It should be discussed tomorrow night.
This is where
This
the.
is on Roxbury Road
Oh,
across
okay.
from the transfer station.
Yeah.
And in terms of the stockpile of soil, again, after talking with the engineer, I did ask him to locate it on a plan, but I believe it's outside the 100-foot upper area.
I know, but when you drive by, there is definitely a vernal pool there. And as Gary said, which was funny, you take a ball, you put it on top of that pile, it will roll right down into that vernal pool.
I actually drove by yesterday and I noticed a significant chunk of the soil pile has been removed. Like, was dug out. Yeah. Not the side closest to the wetland, on the other side.
Yes,
Um,
that I've observed that.
Yeah.
And
But I didn't see the stone hedge.
also
I missed
looking
that.
at the
Oh, it's
pile-
right in front. It's the stones that are going horizontal.
But looking at the pile, it was vegetated. The backside of it should still have vegetation.
Yes.
So it's stable.
That's true.
I'll bring it up tomorrow night. It should be on the plans. I don't have the plans downstairs yet. But it should be shown that this is where things are. I believe it's outside of 100 foot.
Okay.
Did you hear any more about the farm, Waygate Farm, taking all that water from Patagonia Lake?
I did not hear any more about that. They just, I don't know that they've actually started doing any of that with all the rain that we've had. I don't know.
Because it was a significant, I know it was in Deep's hands, it
30,000
wasn't.
gallons or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was
is that
almost-
agricultural, so they automatically get it?
It would be an exempt activity. I mean, they need a permit from the state, which they were applying for the diversion. But based on our regs, we exempt activities, grazing, farming, nursery, gardening, harvesting of crops and farm ponds of 3 acres or less, essential to the farming operation and activities conducted by or under the authority of the Department of Environmental Protection for the purpose of wetlands or watercourse restoration, enhancement, mosquito control.
But Art specifically said that Patagonia is where some of our water comes from,
Drinking water.
drinking water.
It's within that.
So,
If they're taking it to farm, where's the?
yeah.
Which is no different than us taking it to drink.
I don't know about that.
They said, didn't Gary say it was like 3 football fields
Yeah,
worth
or
of
something like that.
water a day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was curious where that was
I
going.
mean, I guess to put it into context, there's over 100,000 gallons of water goes over the dam and ladder will go up. I think it's like 140,000. So, within the day. So that, I don't know if that helps with context. I can talk to the water department and kind of get numbers on what does the water department pump out in terms of gallons. You know, a gallon is small, right? So,
Yeah. Animal.
So I can certainly follow up if you'd like to. I can contact them and find out if they started.
Well, it is interesting.
Yeah, I was curious. I think, especially with our watershed activities within there. Just curious what's going on with that.
Have you also heard anything more about the buses? Did we? I forget where we left off with that.
Yeah, they flooded out. Did you see that? I have pictures of that from the storm. There were buses in the water. Again, a reason to move the bus garage.
So I contacted Chris Lund. He's doing the maintenance, property management type stuff over there. So he rented up the flagpole to Jeff Newton, and it's now on their radar.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start working on trying to find an alternative location or improving that lot.
How do you improve it without messing up the
location,
wetlands?
yeah.
You can improve the lot. You could pave it, put drainage in, and capture all that runoff and treat it before you dump it into the wetland. Now it's just
Going in there.
infiltrating and running off.
To the ground.
I would say it probably runs off. It infiltrates a little bit. Once it's saturated, that gravel lot is just compacted. It's probably with iron.
Yeah, it is.
So it's just
It's called hard pan.
anyway to the wetland.
There was 2 feet of water in
It was
that
up
parking
to like
lot.
the.
Yeah.
I
It's
saw
all hard
pictures.
pan.
So the next question is this lot in a flood zone? I mean,
Yeah.
if it is, if this thing's gonna flood like that,
It's a
No.
big
it doesn't make any
liability to
sense
the
leave
town.
it.
Right.
So paving, there's
Here,
actually
I have a picture of
pervious
the bus.
paving,
Unbelievable.
right?
That's great.
Somebody posted it on
Yeah,
Facebook.
of course they do.
Because
some of you-
UConn has it.
Yeah,
You can't use it now.
that's terrible.
This is something, I mean, you certainly should have a discussion with our public works and see how they feel about this. But
We're not gonna move
I
that
like
down,
the idea
they're
of
gonna move
purpose
it.
pavements in parking lots. It does require maintenance, it requires vacuum. Well, that might be, something that we put on applicants and landowners and commercial developments, they're gonna vacuum their lots, they're gonna vacuum their lots. On the flip side is town, I think our town engineers, as engineers, don't care for that because it's a maintenance issue and there's a cost. So I think as long as there's no cost transferred to the town, great. Well, the town's supposed to be setting the example, shouldn't we be putting these low impact development products into our own lots? So there we gotta somehow convince Public Works that the cost of doing this outweighs the environmental impact of not. And so I think there's something that we have to educate our own town engineers on it. They may understand that, but again, we have to, from the kind of the top down, I think the administration needs to understand there's going to be a cost of doing business. That's what I call it. So while I can appreciate a 50-year build, which we were well intended when we did things like the trees downtown and the tree wells, we used a recycled rubber aggregate. Well, they're clogged up because they weren't maintained. So now we're going to try something new. Something, again, synthetic, but it's supposed to be more permeable. It's the same type of turf that they use in the field at the high school. That'll be interesting. So I guess you'll have green strips that look like grass, but you never have to mow it. But again, it needs to be maintained, just like the football field does. So these tree wells will silt up.
Oh, yeah.
And no longer, I mean, something like that. And our planning recommendation was just go mulch. It works. It comes into the road, we'll sweep it up.
Right.
It's impervious, or I'm sorry, it's pervious. So, but
We got tons of it.
Yeah.
All right, so can we make a motion here?
Motion, yeah. I make a motion that
Yeah.
we adjourn
Enforcement
at
first
9:11.
I guess.
I second.
Giddy up.
Yep. All those in favor?
All right.
Well, thank you. Very interesting.
All right.